get an envelope of cash just for hanging out with these older guys for a night. I'm not sure if that was mental health necessarily or the lure of money, but it certainly wasn't a long sustained period of her life. It was very new.
In 2012, Laura Babcock, a young woman from Toronto, disappeared under mysterious circumstances, sparking one of Canada's most complex and chilling murder investigations. At first, her disappearance seemed to leave no trace, leaving behind only a web of unanswered questions and growing uncertainty. However, as the investigation progressed, it became increasingly clear that Laura's death was not an isolated event. Instead, it was part of a darker and more twisted narrative. The ensuing trial unveiled a disturbing combination of jealousy, manipulation, and calculated violence, exposing the shocking depths of human depravity. So, what really happened to Laura Babcock? How did her tragic disappearance unravel into a horrifying tale of betrayal and murder? Let's look closer into the unsettling details.
What we know of Laura is that she was full of whimsy. Anybody that talks about her just talks about what a ball of energy she was. She was the type of friend that would call you 20 times a day just because she wanted to be in touch.
Laura Babcock, a 23-year-old woman, disappeared under mysterious circumstances in early July 2012. She was known for her bubbly and kind personality. She was deeply connected to her loved ones, particularly her mother, with whom she spoke multiple times daily. However, she had been grappling with personal challenges, including conflicts with her parents, staying with friends, and a recent decision to work as an escort. Despite these struggles, her sudden silence alarmed her family and friends, as it was uncharacteristic of her to sever contact entirely. In the days leading up to her disappearance, Laura visited her parents' home in Etobicoke. During this visit, she left behind significant personal belongings, including her cherished dog, Lacey, a suitcase, and a shoebox containing $1,000 in cash items she would likely have taken if she had intended to leave voluntarily. Her actions puzzled her family, further deepening their concern when they could no longer reach her.
And it also means we have to face him, or we will face him again at parole hearings. So
yeah, that's tough, because although I don't believe that we'll ever have total closure, it's sort of like having a Band-Aid ripped off and we get to relive everything again. It's just not right.
Sean Lerner, Laura's former boyfriend, took it upon himself to search for her, contacting her friends and retracing her steps. His efforts uncovered troubling details, but Laura's trail effectively ended on July 3rd, 2012. On that day, her final outgoing phone call was traced to a cell tower near Dellen Millard's home. Despite numerous attempts by her family and friends to contact her in the days and weeks that followed, Laura never responded. This disturbing and prolonged silence prompted authorities to revisit her case. The lack of communication from Laura, combined with the circumstantial evidence from her last known movements, this would ultimately prompt investigators to reveal a dark and intricate chain of events surrounding her disappearance.
We'll update the media on 2 investigations currently being investigated and followed up with by the Toronto Police Homicide Squad. First, I will update you on the missing persons case of Miss Laura Babcock.
Dellen Millard, the heir to a wealthy aviation fortune, and Mark Smich, a high school dropout and aspiring rapper, were already serving life sentences. They were convicted for the 2013 murder of Tim Bosma, a 32-year-old man.
Don't need him, but I do. And our daughter needs her daddy back.
Bosma had disappeared after taking them on a test drive of a truck he was selling online. Bosma never returned home, and his remains were later discovered, burned in a device owned by Millard. During Laura Babcock's trial, the jury was purposely kept in the dark about Dellen Millard and Mark Smich's previous conviction. They were also unaware of Millard's pending trial for the murder of his father, Wayne Millard, which had originally been ruled a suicide.
For 3 years, we have been in and out of this courthouse, forced to look at and breathe in the same space with the utter depths of depravity in our society.
The Crown meticulously built its case, presenting evidence that Millard and Smich killed Laura Babcock to resolve a love triangle between Millard, Laura, and his girlfriend, Christina Nudga. Text messages exchanged in the months leading up to Laura's disappearance described a bleak scenario of Millard's escalating hostility. In April 2012, he sent a chilling text to Nudga, declaring his intent to hurt Laura and remove her from their lives. Prosecutors argued that Dellen Millard and Mark Smich meticulously planned the abduction and murder of 23-year-old Laura Babcock on July 3, 2012. They contended that the two men lured Laura to Millard's Etobicoke home under false pretenses, with her final known activity being a phone call to check her voicemail.
And I thought, no. I know that Tim would charge his phone when he got home from work to make sure his phone was fully charged. So it should not be going to voicemail. And it was like alarm bells, like crazy.
This call was traced to a cell phone tower near Millard's residence, placing Laura in the vicinity and supporting the theory that she had been taken there willingly, unaware of the grim fate awaiting her.
As a result of this information, a production order was prepared, and we are now conducting a comprehensive review of the entire phone records. I can confirm at this time that there appears to be phone contact on July 3, 2012, between Laura Babcock and Mr. Dellen Millard.
The evidence presented during the trial was horrifying. Central to the prosecution's case was an industrial animal incinerator, which Millard had purchased several months before the crime. The incinerator, ominously named the Eliminator, was presented as a tool specifically bought to destroy human remains. On the night of Laura's murder, a photograph was revealed showing Smich standing in front of the incinerator. This damning image, along with other forensic evidence, strongly suggested that Millard and Smich used the machine to burn Laura's body in an attempt to obliterate any traces of their crime.
During the weekend of May 10, 2013, a Mr. Dellen Millard was arrested. As a result of his arrest, the Toronto Police Service became aware of several phone records belonging to Laura Babcock.
Court records further exposed a disturbing pattern of planning. Text messages and other communications demonstrated that both men had discussed their intentions beforehand. This premeditation was a key factor in securing the first-degree murder convictions for both men. The defense team tried to cast doubt on the prosecution's narrative, claiming there was a lack of direct evidence tying Millard and Smich to the crime scene. They suggested alternative scenarios for Laura's disappearance, but the jury ultimately found the evidence against them overwhelming. The defense's efforts were unsuccessful in influencing the jury, and both Millard and Smich were convicted of murder. This verdict confirmed the horrifying reality of Laura Babcock's death, marking it as a case of calculated manipulation and brutal violence.
Hours before resting its case, the prosecution made a last-ditch effort. Crown attorney Jill Cameron argued Millard, acting as his own lawyer, repeatedly tried to mislead the court.
The Crown's case against Dellen Millard and Mark Smich in the murder of Laura Babcock was built upon a web of circumstantial evidence that painted a chilling portrait of the young woman's final days. At the heart of the prosecution's argument were phone records, text messages, and self-incriminating statements, all of which pointed to the two men's involvement in her death. These elements were not only crucial in establishing a timeline, but also in revealing the psychological and behavioral patterns of the accused.
I'm not commenting on the phone records. Like I said, we're going through a very comprehensive examination of those records. I can say that on the 3rd of July, there was some contact between the phones of Laura Babcock and Mr. Millard.
One of the most telling pieces of evidence came from phone records. Investigators discovered over 100 interactions between Millard and Babcock in the days leading up to her disappearance. However, all contact abruptly ceased after July 3, 2012, a date which the prosecution contended marked the moment of Babcock's death. This break in communication, coupled with the absence of any further contact after that date, raised suspicion about the fate of Babcock, as her sudden disappearance coincided with the cessation of these interactions.
Laura Babcock was also known to be involved in the sex trade business as an internet escort. The Toronto Police is now appealing to the public for any information that will assist in locating Laura Babcock.
Another striking piece of evidence was a set of rap lyrics written and performed by Mark Smich. These lyrics, which described in graphic detail the burning of a woman's body and the disposal of her phone in a lake, were argued by prosecutors to be more than just a form of artistic expression. They were portrayed as a direct confession to the murder of Laura Babcock. Smich himself later made statements to friends admitting that the lyrics were based on real events, further strengthening the Crown's claim that both he and Millard were involved in the crime. This, combined with the explicit nature of the lyrics, provided a chilling insight into the mindset of the accused.
The bitch started off all skin and bone. Now the bitch lay on some ashes stone. Last time I saw her outside the home. And if you go swimming, you can find a phone. Find a phone? What? Find a phone. If you go swimming, you'll find a phone.
In addition to the phone records and rap lyrics, the prosecution relied on a series of letters written by Dellen Millard to his then-girlfriend, Christina Nudga. In these letters, Millard outlined a version of events in which Laura Babcock allegedly overdosed in his basement after using cocaine with Smich. He described how her body was disposed of, but later dismissed these statements as mere brainstorming. Despite his instructions to Nudga to destroy the letters, police were able to recover 65 of them during a search of her bedroom. These letters, which described the crime in detail, not only implicated Millard, but also demonstrated his efforts to craft a narrative that would divert suspicion from himself and Smich.
And it's just a bag. But the officer held it up for the jury to see, and you can see her handwriting there. And you know it's her bag, but it was in Mark Smich's bedroom. Even moments like that, it hurts you.
The lack of direct physical evidence, such as a body, posed a significant challenge for the prosecution. However, the circumstantial evidence allowed the Crown to construct a compelling case. The absence of Babcock, the cessation of communication with Millard, and the incriminating statements made by both accused pointed to their guilt. The prosecution argued that the combination of these elements, along with their attempts to cover up the crime, left no reasonable doubt about their involvement in Laura Babcock's murder. Using a complex set of indirect evidence, the Crown managed to create a clear and convincing story of what led to Babcock's tragic death.
The recap was today was for the appeal against the murder of his father. He was found guilty. He has one life sentence now. We don't know the results of the other two appeals, the one with Tim Bosma and our daughter, and we'll find out probably within the month what happened with those cases.
The trial of Dellen Millard and Mark Smich for the murder of Laura Babcock began in 2017. The courtroom was heavy with tension as the Crown presented its case, laying out a complex web of evidence that included over 80 exhibits, hundreds of text messages, and detailed phone records. Millard's decision to represent himself was a controversial choice that injected a disturbing dynamic into the trial. His defense centered on a denial of motive, claiming he did not care enough about his girlfriend, Christina Nudga, to kill Laura. He dismissed the allegations as baseless and portrayed himself as indifferent to the love triangle the Crown cited as his motive. Meanwhile, Smich's lawyer refrained from presenting evidence, instead arguing that the absence of Laura's body precluded definitive proof of her murder.
There's others that we want to thank, including Sean Lerner. I doubt that there's another person who cares more for his friends than Sean. We can only wish him the best in all he does in the future, and if we can ever be of assistance.
The Crown, however, presented a compelling case. Judges were shown chilling evidence of Millard's texts to Nudga, in which he vowed to remove Laura from their lives. They also heard Smich's rap lyrics, which disturbingly referenced burning a body. Combined with phone records placing Laura at Millard's home on the night of her disappearance and the suspicious purchase of an industrial incinerator, the story told by the prosecution was very damaging.
Find a phone? What? Find a phone. If you go swimming, you can find a phone. Find a phone. Find a phone. You can find a phone. If you go swimming, you can find a phone. Bitch, lay on some ash stone.
On December 16, 2017, a jury found Dellen Millard and Mark Smich guilty of first-degree murder in the 2012 death of Laura Babcock. The verdict followed a 7-week trial, bringing a mix of relief and sorrow to Babcock's family, who described the proceedings as a 6-week funeral. Several jurors and family members wept as the verdict was announced, marking a significant step in a case built on circumstantial evidence and chilling admissions.
To Mike Carboni and Dave Hillman, thanks for all your investigative efforts and for making sure that we are holding up in court. Thanks to all of the efforts of the Toronto Hamilton Police Forces, the OPP, and all others that were involved in the investigation.
Justice Michael Code imposed automatic life sentences on Millard and Smich, each with a 25-year parole ineligibility. However, given their previous convictions for the 2013 murder of Tim Bosma, the jury recommended consecutive sentences for Millard. After considering their recommendations, Justice Code ruled that Millard must serve 75 years before being eligible for parole, effectively sentencing him to spend the rest of his life in prison. For Smich, only 5 jurors recommended consecutive sentencing, leaving his parole ineligibility at 25 years. The decision ensured accountability for their heinous acts, but for Laura Babcock's grieving family, justice could not erase the profound loss they continued to endure.
In addition to being murderers, this pair are cowards. We could have accepted an earlier parole eligibility, but when asked in court if they had any final words, both declined to say even that they were sorry for our loss or had any remorse.
Both Dellen Millard and Mark Smich appealed their convictions for the murder of Laura Babcock, each raising different arguments. Millard argued that his right to a fair trial was violated when he was denied an adjournment to secure legal counsel. However, the Court of Appeal rejected this claim, noting that Millard had the financial means to hire a lawyer but chose to represent himself, as he did in other trials. Smich's appeal focused on errors in the trial judge's instructions to the jury, particularly regarding his after-the-fact conduct. While the appeal panel recognized the mistake, they determined that it did not affect the fairness of the trial because the evidence against Smich was overwhelming. In June 2023, Ontario's top court upheld both men's convictions. The ruling provided a sense of justice for Laura's family, but also highlighted the lasting grief caused by her tragic death.